Hey everybody, the Real Behemoth here, back again with another video for Heroes of History. Today we're going to be jumping into a new campaign tier list. So I've got two pages here, so bear with me here, but we're going to go through from bottom to top and let's jump into it. So in D tier, these are the heroes I would strongly recommend not using when it comes to campaign. A lot of them are not going to be very useful in your campaign grind. Now, of course, with hard campaign, some of these are going to be changing a little bit. So you're going to be needing a lot of these heroes regardless, just due to the restrictions. So keep that in mind. This is going to be for regular campaign. So first off, we obviously know the 2 stars, a majority of them are going to be in this tier. And then we have a couple of other stars and from other heroes in this tier as well. So, we'll start out with Dart. Dart, he's very squishy. He's not going to do a lot of damage for you when it comes to campaign. Very few people, if anybody, will be using him in campaign unless you pull him like very early from the start and you just kind of need a placeholder or slot filler. He's just not going to do anything for you as a single striker, and he's not going to be able to get you through any minion waves. And even as a single striker against heroes, he's not going to be doing massive damage or anything like that unless you're in super early campaign. Cyrus, kind of a similar thing. I thought with relics he'd be a little bit better, but overall, there's just very little to no value from him. And then Inanna, a very similar thing compared to Dart there, where you're just not going to have a lot of value. You are going to level her for Tesla, but that is about it there for her and Dart. Now in C tier, we have Abraham Van Helsing. We've got Bessie Coleman, Spartacus as our 4-star heroes there. Abraham, he's going to be okay if paired with Vlad Dracula, but you got to have both. And if you don't have both, it just makes him very, I hate to say it any other way, but very useless. So he's going to be doing decent damage against your heroes, opponent wise, but against minions, not as much. You're not going to see much benefit to him again without Vlad. Bessie Coleman, she's going to have a very situational use. She's going to be used against some of those levels where you're going against somebody, let's say with, a mind control like Cleo, or if you're going to be going against somebody like a Lancelot that does a ton of single target damage to you and likely wipes out your hero in one shot. That's the only time that she's really going to be able to be used. She's not going to be able to be used against minion waves or even hero waves with a lot of minions. But, with her accuracy debuff, it's 100%. So you have to time it very well, but you can completely nullify a Lancelot hit, an Achilles hit, and some of these other really big hitters like Boudica or William Tell. So she can be used against some of those levels, but other than that, she's got zero use case in campaign. Spartacus, it's very interesting because he comes off very tanky, but he's not super tanky. His ability is really more focused towards damage, and there are just a lot better options that you can use in that regard. For 3 stars, we've got Ada Lovelace. We've got Leonidas. We have John Locke and Marco Polo. And then lastly, Ulysses S. Grant. Ada Lovelace is going to be doing some AoE damage. Her AoE damage is decent early on. So if you're going to be using her, use her in early campaign, but it will fall off very quickly. Similar like Leonidas there. Leonidas is our starter hero. And so he has some benefit with his Stomp Stun ability. And he can be very tanky early on, but he falls off very quickly as well. So once you start getting some of the actually, better tanks, he's going to be doing a little bit less for you in the long term. We've got John Locke. John Locke can be used both against heroes and against minions, but if you're using him against minions, his damage just feels very low for his bomb that pops off on the initial hit. So he has a very strong single strike, and then it spreads to a certain range around him, and his damage is just kind of underwhelming, and there are just better options. Same thing. Marco Polo is the worst version of, a Leonardo da Vinci, a Thomas Edison, heroes like that. He does that little teleport. His teleport is significantly longer than Edison's. And he doesn't have any buff like Edison's attack speed buff, and he doesn't have any damage over time like Leonardo da Vinci. So there's just not too much of a use case for him. Ulysses S. Grant. You're going to be leveling him for your blue Tesla, and he can be decently tanky. And so that's what you're really going to use him for, is that off tank type of unit. But there are just, again, better tanks. Comparing him to Attila the Hun, Attila will last you significantly longer than a Ulysses would. But Ulysses is absolutely usable in early middle type of campaign. Hassan is going to be very good for early campaign. So for 2 stars, we've got Hassan, we have Eric the Red, Chiome, and Naya. All 4 of these are going to be very solid units for early campaign. So if you want to go ahead and level these to get you through early and a little bit of mid campaign, and early, first 10 chapters, mid, more so around 20 chapters. There's a lot of cases in which they can be used in both, but this is really going to be more so for your early game units. Hassan is the early taunt. So before you get Otto or, King Minos or Caesar, some of those taunt heroes, some of those bigger taunt heroes that you're going to be using throughout a majority of campaign, he's going to be a good source for you to level. And the bright side to leveling 2-star heroes like these is you can use them in future TH teams, and you can use them in Tesla battles. For example, Chiome and Naya can be used in Tesla. Same with Eric. Hassan less so, but he'll be used in TH. So you can max them out without having any worry about wasted resources and lost materials. In B tier, we've got a lot of 5 stars, 4 stars, and 3 stars in B tier. Each of them are in B tier for a reason. So for 5 stars, we've got Mozart, Ragnar, Lancelot, Hercules, Einstein, Abe, Achilles, Mulan, Leonardo, Wallace, Joan, Sun Tzu, and Vlad. So for Mozart, I really don't like heroes that have that multi-round buildup. So if you can use somebody in replace of Mozart to just dish good damage or stun, or each hero is going to be used for a very specific reason. So Mozart having like a stun and damage dealing, that's great, don't get me wrong. But if you're using him for a stun, you have somebody like Beethoven that's going to be doing you a lot more work and a lot better work, in my personal opinion, without a lot of resources lost. And he doesn't have that buildup. He's consistent. There's no small, medium, long range type of deal, and no buildup. So with Beethoven, you're going to get a consistent output. With Mozart, less so. And so if you're using Mozart for damage, there are significantly better AoE damage dealers than Mozart. So that's the reason why I throw him in B tier. For Ragnar, Ragnar's taunt is too short in terms of range. And that's why he's in there. He does do a great job tanking, but that taunt range is just too short. So you're really going to use him for very situational levels, and in one of your TH teams if you have limited 5 stars. Lancelot and Achilles are both in here for a very similar reason. They are not super tanky. They are very situational. You're really going to primarily use them against your hero versus hero levels. They're not going to really be used in minion levels, but if you level them high enough, they can tank decently well. So you can also use them as a sort of tank. I know our famous Jartulian, he uses Lancelot. I believe his Lancelot is almost max now. I think he got a max awaken recently, but he used him, to tank for him a lot because he had limited heroes. Hercules, I really threw him in there because it's one of those things where he's not super duper tanky, but he also has that stomp stun type of deal. And, I think that later on, as more people are going to level his ability up, I think at higher ability levels, he may end up moving to A tier if his self-heal is decent enough. But For now, we're keeping him here. He does decent damage, and he has a decent stun. So paired with a taunt tank in the back row and having him right in front of the taunt tank, you can really make use of his stun ability. Check out my hero highlight on him if you want to see a little bit more gameplay for him. Einstein just got his ability fixed. The attack speed was not working for quite a while, but he just doesn't do as much damage as we'd hope. He's essentially Van Gogh, except with an attack speed debuff. So Van Gogh, I mean, they're always weirdly placed. So there's no really real consistency from what I've used in their abilities, but I think his damage is pretty subpar for being a 5-star. And, you know, when you compare him to others that do that kind of AoE type of damage, I just don't think he's quite there, but I think that he could definitely use a buff. Abe Lincoln, he's going to be very situational as well. You know, you can pair him up with Caesar to have dual invincibility there, and kind of back to back so that you stay up quite long. But again, very situational. You're going to have to use him on very specific levels, and that's the reason he's in there. Mulan. I think Mulan could theoretically be an A tier. I think she's got a ton of positives and very few negatives, but she's in B tier because you're going to want to pair her up with a healer. She's going to be used more so as an off-tank damage dealer, and she does really great damage as well. So definitely could be A tier, but you know, on a lot of these levels, she just doesn't cut it to that next level. Da Vinci's in B tier simply because I still think he needs a little bit of work. He's got one more bug that they're about to fix, but he still needs a little bit of work. So, I mean, I think that with a torch added as a new relic for him, I think he's definitely gone up in the ranks. However, he's not as good as some of these other big damage dealers. William Wallace, sore spot for me. I've got Mind Awaken 3 and max ability now at, I want to say, a level 100, and he's okay. I think his ability needs a slight rework. I think he dies a little too easily for a tank. He does not taunt. He doesn't have really anything super special about him, and he dies very easily. You're going to want a really decent healer with him, or a taunt tank to really take a majority of the damage. But if you're running a taunt tank, you really don't need him. Run a buffer, healer, support unit, something like that instead. So very difficult for him to be used in campaign. Joan of Arc, she is very squishy. She deals a lot of damage, and I've got my max ability Awaken 3 right now as well at level 100, same as my William Wallace. She does really great damage, but she's very situational for me, and they're just better heroes to use there. You know, better combos. So same thing with Sun Tzu. Sun Tzu, you know, he's supposed to be more of a tanky type, but he's not. He does have other uses though. So you're going to use him a decent bit because he's one of your, you know, typically one of their first 5 stars they're able to pull. But that's really the only reason. And then in TH too. Vlad, just his bleed. You have to surround him with bleed, otherwise he is relatively useless. With his bleed, he can be very, very solid and very, very tanky. So keep that in mind when using him. Pair him up with somebody like a Marie or an Abraham, someone like that. Abraham meaning Abraham Van Helsing down there at the beginning of C tier. Jane Austen. Jane Austen is great, just not as great as Cleo. So it's really hard to put her any higher than B tier. I've never used her personally. I don't see a ton of use for her. I always, you know, had other use cases for others over her. However, in a lot of hero type levels, she is fantastic. So a lot of people would absolutely recommend that you use her. I just think that she's fallen off just a little bit at the higher campaign tiers and levels. Attila's going to be used more so on that mid tier and mid campaign levels. He's going to be an off tank, better than Ulysses. He's got that self heal, and he's actually going to be doing a decent amount of damage against heroes when it comes to those hero versus hero battles. So keep that in mind. Charlemagne is great. He's got a little bit of a debuff, and he is going to be an off tank as well. I just think that there are better options, and we can keep going each individually, but I know this video is going to be quite long, so we'll kind of group some people up and kind of push them together. Plato and Karl Marx are great in terms of debuffers, but I am more of a fan of buffing units over them. And I think that they can sometimes be wasted slots. If you need your tanks to survive that just extra little bit, they are fantastic and absolutely can be used. But again, B tier is a lot of situational use. Same thing with Lewis. If you're using Lewis for his shield, you got to have him up a little bit. And again, very situational. In my personal opinion, I prefer the attack or the crit buffers, those types of buffers instead. Van Gogh, after his nerf, he's dropped down to B tier, and his damage just isn't quite there anymore, and his swirl placement is very off. It's supposed to target the largest cluster, and sometimes, if not most of the time, it sits on the edge of the cluster, so it doesn't even hit everybody. Leif is very good in campaign. There's definitely a lot more testing that needs to be done with him. There's definitely a use case for him to be pushed up to A tier, but he's really only used for those hero levels, so there's not much use for him elsewhere, which is why he's in B tier. And Bonnie, simply put, does not compare to Means. Herman, decent off tank, is going to survive quite a lot, especially in that early to mid game campaign. But there are better tanks end game. Artemisia doesn't have anything special with her skill, does quite a bit of damage, great for treasure hunt, not great for campaign. Pythagoras, after his nerf there, they nerfed him. I want to say it was like 6x on his burn. So take off 6x of what he was doing before. He's not as shiny anymore. Margaret, I think that there are better buffers that you can use. Same thing with Mansa Musa. Musashi, there are going to be a couple of levels that you're going to want to use him at, early to mid game, that you're going to want to just chop down some of these heroes with a little bit longer abilities, and he can absolutely assist with that. The Oracle is very solid, but she only hits a specific group when you have somebody like Confucius that hits the whole entire field. William Tell, great for those back lines on early and mid game, but in my personal opinion, you have Boudica and you have Robin Hood. They outshine William Tell all day. Moving on to our next tier list portion, we have our A tier. We've got Blackbeard, Alexander, Napoleon, George Washington, Ben Franklin, Queen Elizabeth, Ramses, Robin Hood, and Lagertha for our 5 stars in A tier. So Blackbeard. So unlike Mozart, Blackbeard's buildup can also be utilized with your other heroes. So pair him up with somebody like Means, who can use his dousing to deal a large amount of damage. Mozart doesn't have that. So Blackbeard, whether single-handedly or dueling with another burn type unit, will do massive damage. So that is why he is in A tier. But it's also why he's not in S tier, right? Because you need that build up if you do plan on running him solo. Alexander the Great still needs testing, and we still need to, look a little bit deeper into him, but I think he's really A tier material. I think he's going to be a very, very solid tank, and so we'll have yet to see more. I will be making a hero highlight video on either him and Philip or just Philip, depending on who I pull in a later summon video. Napoleon is an A tier for sure. He deals damage, he buffs, he debuffs, he does, he's able to tank. He's a very, very solid unit overall, and especially now with relics. So Napoleon is the only hero currently in the game with an evasion awaken. At awaken level 2, he has a 15% evasion built into him. So what does that mean? Well, that means that almost 1 out of every 6 attacks are going to be evaded, which is massive. It's going to keep him up significantly longer. And with the Abacus relic equipped to him, it'll end up being about 23%. So almost 1 in every 4 attacks at that point. which is very, very solid. So I think he's going to be almost S tier material at Awaken level 2 with the Abacus Relic. And, and especially paired with Benjamin Franklin, who also debuffs accuracy, you're going to see a lot of positives in running Napoleon. And along with his damage with a buffer type of unit in your team or a support unit, you're going to see him doing significantly more as well. And he's also able to use the Aquila Relic. And the Aquila Relic, when he crits, he just does wonders. George Washington, the only reason he's an A tier is because his Soul Link is a double-edged sword. So, obviously you have a damage share, and so it can really prevent those one-shot hitters like a Robin Hood, a Lagartha, etc., from absolutely destroying one of your units. But alongside that, you're splitting damage. And so if you don't have a healer like Tiger Lily who can purify, any dot/damage over time, damage that is, getting pushed and put on your heroes, you're going to see those effects really hurt your whole squad. Benjamin Franklin is still one of my favorite overall heroes in the game. I think that he's super, super overpowered, both against heroes and against minions. I mean, he can be utilized against both. Now, he's going to be more utilized toward heroes with his ability blocker and his debuff. However, he can still, apply a little bit of that debuff to your minions. You have better debuffing options if it's going to be towards minions itself, which is why he's an A tier. But he can be utilized across the board. And I mean, I think that he's most utilized really right now in Arena. He's in almost every high level Arena team. And so he is just a pain to deal with. He is going to be having a 10x summon rate up, I believe, soon. It's on beta right now, so we should be seeing that soon. So save your pulls and see if you can try your luck at pulling him. I think everybody needs Benjamin Franklin in their lives. Queen Elizabeth and Ramses, both very solid buffers. Queen Elizabeth buffs your whole squad, and the more you level her, the more you put into her. She scales quite well. I know that she's gotten a lot of hate, but she's getting better and better, especially with relics now introduced. Having a team where multiple units have Aquila, having her crit buff is absolutely essential. So you definitely are going to make sure that you want to level her if you have her, and especially if you don't have a ton of buffers that you're able to use, she's going to be very clutch for you. Ramses, the only reason he's an A tier is because of his range. He's got limited range for his buff. In a lot of scenarios, you can actually get 4 units in his buff. However, because of that range, I threw him an A, but his buff is insane. Robin Hood and Lagartha are going to be your single target damage dealers. Robin Hood is going to be ranged. Lagartha is going to be melee. Robin Hood has a damage over time with burn/bleed, and Lagartha has her attack speed buff. So Robin Hood is going to be really essential for some later campaign levels. He was one of the main units that I used to clear 38-6, which is one of the hardest campaign levels in the game by far. So that was a very tough level to beat, and he came in very clutch, killing a Leif for me. So he's going to be used in a few different later campaign levels, and it is going to be very difficult to beat them without him. It's definitely possible, but he makes it just so much easier. Similar thing with Lagartha. Lagartha, it may be slightly worse than Robin Hood in campaign just because she's melee, so she takes some of that aggro from your opponents onto herself, unless you obviously have a taunt with you. But the bright side for her is if a battle is lasting longer, she's going to do better than Robin Hood just because her attack speed buff will not go away unless she's stunned, mind controlled, etc. Her attack speed buff lasts for 8 seconds, and her ability pops in 8 seconds. So she's able to maintain that throughout the battle, which is great. Philip, similar to Alexander, we need a little bit more testing, and once if I pull him, I will be making a hero highlight video kind of sharing my thoughts on him in depth and a little bit more in detail, but I think he's going to be a very, very solid unit and a really good tank. I think he's going to outperform Otto, but I think time will tell. So we'll see how tanky he is in comparison. Tiger Lily, there's going to be a little bit of disagreement here potentially. But Tiger Lily and Hot Chip Soot in previous tier lists were at the same tier. I think that Hot Chip Soot belongs in S, while Tiger Lily belongs in A. Now, Tiger Lily in shorter battles is gonna still out heal Hot Chip Soot when both are maxed. However, Tiger Lily is going to be a little bit more situational simply due to her having a purification instead of a focus regen or a focus buff for your team. So on levels where you're going to need George Washington, for example, if you're pairing against, two Robin Hoods. I remember there's a level being, two Robin Hoods and I think two Hot Chip Soots. It was crazy. Well, you're going to need George Washington for a level like that. And pairing with Tiger Lily after the Robin Hood hits you, and you have that damage split and everybody's burning together and losing HP quickly. Tiger Lily with her big heal and purification to do away with that burn/bleed, or even Cleopatra's mind control comes in very clutch. Confucius is a great 4-star unit. Highly recommend using him. His buff/debuff hits the whole field. And so you're going to see a lot of positives with him. If you have him, definitely level him. He is going to be solid for a TH team at worst. But if you have better buffers, of course, use them instead. Beethoven with his stun, I threw him in A, unlike, Mozart, like I had mentioned before. I think that he's going to be, a very incremental unit when it comes to treasure hunt, but in campaign, he's also going to be utilized on a couple of levels as well. And he can be utilized across the board, especially if you're running a team with a taunt, with means, with Beethoven. You can pop your taunt. You have means, do a lot of damage, tear down that movement speed, and when their movement speed starts picking back up again, pop Beethoven, and they'll burn to death from means' ability. Edison at higher tiers and higher levels doesn't become the suicide jumper anymore. He deals damage, and I think that he can be very solid still, even in late game campaign. I used him as more of a distraction in late game campaign, and that actually worked very effectively. And so I wish I had made a video on that, but it was very situational for the distraction purposes itself. Boudica. I think Boudica is a very solid unit. I think that she's going to be very well used in campaign. You are absolutely going to need her if you do not have Cleopatra. Boudica, you're going to need her max level, max ability, max awakened for some of those 1v1 levels. You're going to need her against both Lancelot 1v1 and Lagertha 1v1 if you do not have your Cleopatra. Now, need is a strong word. There are other ways to beat those 1v1 levels, but Boudica is the cheapest and the fastest way to do it. So that's my recommendation. You're going to want to run the Abacus Relic maxed if possible against Lagertha. I know that. I don't know if you need it versus Lancelot, but you're going to need it versus Lagertha for sure to block one ability hit. It may take a few tries, but you'll be able to beat it with Boudica. She's also great in TH as well for, Grandmaster. When you're versing more heroes, I think that she's a very solid unit. Tomo does a lot of damage. She is very squishy, though, and that's why she is in A tier. She does a lot of damage, and she can be very, very vital when using a taunt hero as well. Tanzin, great heals, very strong across the board. Now, I still think he doesn't compare to Hot Chip Soot. That's my opinion. But definitely a very solid healer if you were able to snag him last season. Otto, I still think he's a very, very crucial unit in this game. You're going to use him across campaign tiers. You're going to use him early, mid, and late game if you do lack your taunt tanks. He's easy to max, and unlike some of the other taunt units, you're going to see a lot of benefit from him very early. So I definitely recommend that you still level him, especially if you don't have other taunt tanks like Caesar, like Minos, etc. Ashaka is one of our only few single target healers and is going to be used a little bit more situationally now with a lot of people out leveling him with the 4-stars. We're starting to see his heals fall off a little bit later in the game in campaign, which is why he's an A tier versus S. But his counterpart Amelia is up in S. So we'll go ahead and jump over to S tier now. We have Cleopatra, Caesar, Marie Curie. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, so I apologize. But Medusa, Amelia, King Minos, Means, Kin, and Hatshepsut. So Hatshepsut is going to be in S tier for sure. You're going to use her as your main healer across the board. She's also kind of a support unit when it comes to her focus buff. You know, having your taunt units, having your heals, having everything across the board pop off more often and sooner is massive. She's a crucial unit in this game. You need to max her if you can. Kin, still very strong utility. He did just fall off as the strongest 4-star. Now he's probably number 2 or number 3 behind the others. But he did just get his nerf like now. So the nerf isn't massive, but it's big enough to where he fell off of first place there for me. He's going to be doing damage. He's going to be able to provide that extra little bit of heals when your taunt unit has everybody clumped around them to keep them up long enough for Hatshepsut to pop her heals off again. And then when she pops off her heals again, they're going to be taunting again because she increases their focus. So it's just a beautiful and vicious cycle all at once. Means is now the number 1 4-star in my book. He is just insane at max across the board. I have him at max, and I just made a hero highlight video on him recently, so go ahead and check that out if you haven't already. He is going to dish massive damage. I think in that video of his hero highlight, he did 343,000 damage in 1 level for me. So you're going to see a lot of benefit from him. You know, his burn is strong, his range is big, and he has an attack buff. Provides a debuff of movement speed. He just hits everything aside from having some sort of heal or something along with him. But he is very, very solid. King Minos, you guys know, I've used him in really everything. He is my favorite taunt unit. I did just get Caesar, so that may change, but he's got his heal, he's got his shield. He's a very tanky unit, and especially with Abacus and Hatshepsut keeping him above that 80% health line for Abacus to pop, he evades actually quite often. So definitely recommend that you use him. You're going to see that auto falls off for you when your King Minos is Awaken level 2 at the same level as auto. So if most people have auto max now, that would be level 60, and King Minos at ability level 15. Amelia has just taken the S spot over Ashaka at our number 1 single target healer. She can legit bring your single target heals from, your units from 25% all the way back up to max, gets them out of the battlefield. Typically, it's your taunting tanks as well. So getting them off the battlefield and letting them still recharge. And she's just an insane unit in the game. So I hope to pull her once she jumps over to the normal portal. Medusa. Very, very good damage unit. She has massive damage like Means, the damage over time with her poison, and she has a large range like Means, and her range even gets larger when she hits ability level 30, I believe. And so she's able to hit like half the map. It's crazy. And she scales, as you continue to level her, as you continue to get her awakens and her ability up. So she scales very well. And, her stun is actually very decent as well. So keep that in mind when leveling her. I hope every single one of you have the chance to pull her and obtain her from the normal portal now that she's in there with Minos. So good luck to you guys on that. Marie, very similar to Medusa, scales very well. So at higher levels, you're going to see her doing a lot more. She is one of your crucial 5-stars for campaign and pushing if you do have her and you have limited 5-stars. She's a great one to pull. I'm still missing her. I really want her. I really need her. She's great across the board and across the game. She just does massive damage. So really level her if you possibly can. She's an insane unit. Now, Caesar and Cleopatra, you are going to be pushing campaign by far the easiest if you have both of these units. Caesar, with his invincibility at later campaign levels, you're going to have to time his ability at the perfect time, and it can get you through most levels. You know, just him having that invincibility and shedding that damage from like a Lancelot, or, you know, one of your big single targets like Lagartha, he comes in clutch. And same thing with Cleopatra. Cleopatra is like a hack to campaign. You know, with her, you're able to excel significantly farther than your other units. I mean, if you don't have her, I'm sorry, that sucks. I hope you pull her, but she is a game changer for sure. You know, you're able to run through those 1v1 levels against Lancelot and Lagartha very easily without over leveling, without doing anything crazy, you know, and without her in campaign, you're going to have to over level your heroes quite a bit. But with her, you do not need that. I was able to clear, I believe, full campaign. I still haven't done the last level for whatever reason, but I was able to, you know, clear most campaign, if not, you know, all of it, with her being only level 120, 110, something around there. She's very, very crucial. So I hope you guys pull her. I've got some really great upcoming videos coming up. So for those of you who have lasted this long, I would really appreciate any feedback and any videos that you guys are really looking forward to see. I've got some relic tier lists that are coming out. So we're going to go into each relic and deep dive into who's the best for each relic and why. So look forward to that coming out soon. And then we are going to be pulling for Philip/Alexander hopefully soon as well. And we've got some hard campaign content that I'm going to be creating as well. So look forward to those videos that are going to be coming very soon. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please leave a like and subscribe, and I will catch you in the next one.